you would have definitely known, no matter who you were, that you were in a gay-identified neighborhood. People didn't know that this was the street that Pride was on and how small it was when it began.
A lot more to see. Where are we headed to next? Greetings from Dupont Circle. We're here today to talk to you about one of the lesser-known tours in the Washington, D.C. area. Jeff Donahoe is here with us. He's with the Rainbow History Project, and we're going to go on the Rainbow History Walking Tour today. What is the Rainbow History Walking Tour, Jeff?
Well, probably let's back up and what's the Rainbow History Project? And we're an all-volunteer organization in DC, and we're really dedicated just to making sure that history related to LGBT people in DC specifically never disappears, that we're collecting and sharing people's memories.
How long has the Rainbow History Project been a thing?
We were founded in 2000, and a lot of it was in reaction to that this history was not easy to access, and either it wasn't out there, people didn't know about it, people didn't think it was important perhaps.
Well, listen, we've got our walking shoes on, we've got a lot to see. Let's take off.
Let's go.
We've approached the first stop on the tour here. Where are we, and what did you want to tell us about this place?
So we're on Connecticut Avenue. We're just 1 block north of Dupont Circle where we started. And we're going to take a minute to look at a space across the street that was a bar that ran for a number of years through the early 1990s. It was called Rascals. It was a very welcoming space for African Americans and people of Latino Latinx culture. And the other thing that was important about it was the number of drag shows that they sponsored in a week.
In true DC fashion, the place that you're referencing no longer exists.
That's true.
What is the problem with our city is that we can't keep a good thing going?
Well, you could maybe turn that around and say, one, this is part of development and this is part of gentrification.
All right, so we're just 2 blocks north of Dupont Circle now. We've arrived here at Blue Mercury on Connecticut. What's the significance here?
This was the home of Lambda Rising bookstore, and in fact this was the 3rd site. They were here until 2010, and Lambda Rising is really important. It's an LGBTQ bookstore.
So we're up our street here, the first home of Lambda Books,
which was, first out-identified mission-oriented business through books. Right. It was opened in 1974.
Dupont Circle was the first sort of DC gayborhood. This is really the capital, the hub, what you're showing us right here.
I think that's really great. I mean, they were certainly obviously places where people lived and socialized, but I think starting in the 1970s, this really becomes a space where people not only come to socialize or then to do business, but also live. Dupont Circle, a lot of people don't know, was really very counterculture in the early 70s, and it was really very much based around people being involved in the anti-Vietnam War protest movement, which is how gay people started coming into the neighborhood to volunteer or to work on different projects.
This street itself has historical significance for the LGBTQ plus community.
This is 20th Street between R Street and S Street, and this was the home of the first DC Pride in 1975.
Well, this is fantastic what you're doing. We're so grateful for your time and being able to show us around. You're not going to be the secret tour anymore, though. Once word gets out, your phone's going to start blowing up. Jeff, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very
really
much.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for being interested.
You bet.
First of all, a moment of silence for that T-shirt. That was well done that you put that on.
Maybe a golf cart the next time we do a tour of Dupont in the middle of the summer.
I am all in on counterculture Dupont.
Yeah.
I'm all in on that. First of all, I think it's a credit to the LGBTQ plus community that you have enough landmarks where you can actually do a tour. I think that serves as evidence to a thriving community that's been there for a long time. But the question is, what has happened to the gayborhood?
To that point real quick, that's not the only place that they do them too. They actually do one on Barracks Row, so 8th and I in Southeast. They have a bunch of spots on the website where you can actually do self-guided tours of different aspects and different areas of the city. So you can check that out. It's on their website, and we'll link to that on our site, of course. But when you talk about the gayborhood, right? So that was the first one, right? Dupont Circle. And since then, it's sort of pushed to different neighborhoods in the East. The question now is, where is it now? Mm-hmm. And Jeff and I had an extended discussion about that. It's kind of everywhere and nowhere at the same time. There isn't really one particular spot in DC you could now pick out and say that's the gayborhood, right? Because folks are just everywhere now. Interesting story about Jeff. Lambda Rising, that first spot that we mentioned there on Connecticut Avenue, that was the first place that he remembers going into and seeing an ad for his 3 roommates that he ended up with on Capitol Hill, $300 a month. Mm-hmm. He lived on Capitol Hill after moving from the eastern shore of Maryland. Can you imagine that now? I mean, right now it's like over $1,000 just to get into a coat closet anywhere up
It's
on
one
Capitol
night
Hill.
at a bad Airbnb.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So as I was mentioning, the self-guided tours, you can go to rainbowhistory.org to check that out. And again, Barracks Row, South Cap, other parts of the city where you can go through and you can see some of these landmarks. And the final point that I'll make here is DC is so much different than other cities like Philadelphia, New York, Boston, right? These long entrenched East Coast cities where you have these structures and businesses that have been there for generations and generations. DC is more like Vegas, where we just turn things over quick. We did this when we talked about go-go. None of the original go-go spots are around.
Nope, and both of which need to be brought back. You
Yeah.
know what? We need to develop a consortium, a big tent group.
I like the thought. All right, so listen, follow me on social media, give me some story ideas, or hit me through email, alongo@wsa9.com.